Welcome to Now We're Getting Somewhere. I'm Katie, and I'm a certified life coach, but I've also been a management consultant at McKinsey and a product manager at a tech startup. In other words, I know what it feels like to have a life that looks pretty good on paper, but doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I help my professional clients develop lives that are more meaningful, happy, and also more successful. And I want to share the same practical insights with you. Let's go. Hey there, everybody. Today, I want to talk about a topic that is very close to my heart, which is adult friendship. And in particular, really the mechanics of how do we make and deepen friendships as an adult. I think this topic is so close to my heart for two reasons. One is that I have made big moves twice in my adult life, really across the country. One was from New York City to North Carolina. The other one was from North Carolina back to California to LA. And both times I found myself eventually kind of looking around and realizing, oh, I don't really have any friends here. And in both cases, I also kind of looked around and thought, wait, how does one actually make new and meaningful friendships as an adult? So that's the first reason that this is so close to my heart. And the second is honestly that I don't feel like I am inherently good at making friends. Like, I'm not somebody who walks into a group of people or a class or a cocktail party and chats everyone up and leaves with 4 new amazing friendships. I know people like that, and I am not like that. And compounding that problem is that what I really want is a handful of deep kind of soul friends who I can sit with on their living room floor and eat chips with, and who kind of know all the details of my life and I know all the details of theirs. I'm just not really a kind of small talk kind of person in my ideal scenario. So maybe 5 years ago, I started looking out into the world as I was kind of struggling with realizing I didn't have as many friends as I wanted. And I was searching for advice on this topic. And honestly, I was kind of surprised because despite the vast number of resources that exist in the world on how to find a romantic relationship, for example, there just weren't a ton of resources on how to make adult friends. And of the ones that even existed, the ones that were actually useful and practical on the mechanics of actually making friends from scratch, I found that there were far fewer. The books that I found to be the most helpful by far were by a woman named Shasta Nelson, who really has built her whole career around adult friendships, and in particular around adult female friendships, though I really think her work is also excellent and applicable to men as well. In particular, she has this book called Friendships Don't Just Happen, The Guide to Creating a Meaningful Circle of Girlfriends. That book, in my opinion, is the most helpful of her books. And just to pause here, I wonder whether that title, I'll say it again, it's Friendships Don't Just Happen, The Guide to Creating a Meaningful Circle of Girlfriends. Did that title make you cringe a little bit? Because if I'm being honest, it did for me, at least at first. And I want to talk about that too in a little bit. But overall, today, I want to share 8 concepts, most of them inspired by Nelson's work, that were extremely helpful for me and had very practical implications for how I thought about friendship and approached making and deepening friendships. So let's get into it. The first concept to share with you is that long-distance friends are not the same as local friends. Long-distance friends are not the same as local friends. You know, for a long time, honestly, until I read Shasta Nelson's book, I kept thinking, I guess I'm a little lonely, but I mean, I have a lot of friends. Like, I have these 5 close friends from college and this really close friend from high school. And then these other 2 people who are friends from after college when I lived in New York. And I mean, none of them live anywhere close to Los Angeles, but hey, I am a person with lots of friends. And yes, now I would say those people absolutely are my friends, but Shasta Nelson, in her work, makes the very strong argument that long-distance friends are just a fundamentally different category from local relationships. Again, long distance friends are your friends, and you should maintain those relationships if they're important to you. And I do and plan to, but you would argue that there's some fundamental limitations on how close you can be with your long distance friends. Even if you talk on the phone or text regularly and maybe you see each other once or twice or even 3 times a year, it's nearly impossible to be creating as many new memories or sharing our day-to-day lives with the same intimacy and depth as you could with a local friend. You're not going to be casually meeting up at the local mall because you both happen to need sunglasses. You're not going to be taking a walk together that ends up turning into a whole night spent together because one of you invites the other one over for dinner. You're not going to pop by with some food when the other person has just moved in and lie on their furnitureless wooden floor together and chat for a bit. There is a genuine difference in closeness if you are able to physically see the other person on a regular basis. There is a way in which you are just going to be much more enmeshed in each other's lives. And I will say, even as I share this idea, I know that this may feel triggering because many of us have some really cherished friendships with people who live far from us. And me saying this might make you angry or make you feel sad or feel grief. And I also know that, again, even in the very limited space of people writing about adult friendship, there are some people who have written whole books about very carefully attending to long distance friendships. And look, again, as I've said, I'm not saying we should end our long distance friendships. Those people are our links to the past. They have known us through important seasons in our lives. It's a beautiful thing to intentionally and lovingly tend to those relationships. It's just to say, in order to be a happy person, you must have local friends. Period. You need to be able to see other people who are your friends face to face on a regular basis. And if you don't have enough of those local friends, you will feel bad. And you may not know why you're feeling bad. And you might think it's because you profoundly lack meaning and freak out about your job and spin out into drama. And honestly, I see this a lot as a coach, but it might just be that you do not have enough local friends. So that's number 1. Long distance friends are not the same as local friends, and you must have local friends. Number 2 is finding local friends probably won't just happen. And of course, I will say, maybe for some of us, it sometimes does just happen. Maybe you live very close to where you went to college and you're still friends with many of your college friends, or maybe you have a very close-knit set of colleagues at work and you love those folks. Or maybe some mom at your kid's school just happens to decide that she really wants the two of you to be friends and she initiates everything. Occasionally, that does just happen. But for many, many people, it won't just happen. You will have to intentionally make it happen if you want it to happen. And there's a subtle point beneath this, which I want to say quite explicitly. I think that some of us, me included, can experience shame if finding local friends is not automatically happening. Do you remember how I pointed out that for at least some of us, the title of Shasta Nelson's book, Friendships Don't Just Happen, the Guide to Creating a Meaningful Circle of Girlfriends, it can feel a little cringy. No offense, Shasta Nelson, you are a genius. I genuinely mean that. But I think the reason that that title can feel a little cringy, and it did for me, is that on some level, we feel that we shouldn't need to learn how to cultivate friendships. For so much of our lives, this happens organically. Finding friends may have just happened to you in high school or college or even in your 20s, and we assume that it should be that way always. And so at least for me, when I didn't have friends at the level that I wanted and I wasn't totally sure how to make them, I could sign up for some activities and make some acquaintances, but how did I make the kind of deep friendships that I truly wanted when I didn't really know how to do that? And I found myself literally reading a book on the topic. There was definitely some part of me that worried that maybe all of this meant that I wasn't actually a high quality friend candidate. Like, if I was a person who people wanted to be friends with, wouldn't I already have friends? And so I just want to name that fear in case you have it too and offer you a new potential thought to think. Because I have come to believe that adult life just makes it challenging to have the kind of meaningful friendships that we all crave. Partially that's because a lot of us move, often very significant moves, often several times in our adult life, or our close friends move, or people go through seasons. I know a lot of people, especially those with jobs and young kids, which is the season I'm in right now, who just genuinely don't have time for friendships. Or also, we change. All of us do. And friendships ebb and flow in closeness as the fit is more or less right to us at various points in time. So I think at any given time, a majority of us are lower on meaningful local friendships than we'd really like to be and that would really serve us. And there is nothing intrinsically wrong with any of us. So to name, if it doesn't automatically happen, I don't want you to think that there's anything wrong with you. Just like if the perfect job or the perfect romantic partner doesn't fall into your lap, nothing's wrong with you. Look, is it a pleasure and a gift from the universe when the perfect romantic relationship or job or friendship drops in your lap? Or when the first guy you date online turns out to be your husband? Or when a recruiter reaches out to offer you your dream job? Abso-freaking-lutely. But again, there is nothing wrong with you if that doesn't happen. And if you get the job or the relationship or the friendship instead because you decided this was a top priority and you freaking put in the time and the effort to make it happen. So that's number 2. It probably won't just happen, and it means nothing about you and your potential as a friend if it doesn't. Number 3 is, if you want to have close friends, you have to start with friendly acquaintances. If you want to have close friends, you have to start with friendly acquaintances. Shasta Nelson, in this book I mentioned, Friendships Don't Just Happen, she has a whole 5-stage model for how friendships progress from acquaintances to deep, committed friendships. But the key point here is that friendships are kind of like a funnel. If you're familiar with funnels in marketing or any other field, the idea is that people enter a funnel and then kind of progress through that funnel. A lot of people start at the first stage of the funnel. Some people will stop at one stage and not go any further. Others get filtered out completely and just leave the funnel. And a small, sometimes very, very small percentage of people progress all the way through. And that does apply to friendships too. Like lots of people enter this, quote unquote funnel at the beginning. Some will progress to being kind of friends or solid but not too close friends. Some of them will exit along the way, and a very, very tiny number will become your close friends. So there are 2 implications of this concept that are worth noting. The first is that the place where all friendships begin, every stinking one, no matter how deep or intimate they may eventually be, is as a friendly acquaintance. Friendly acquaintance is the beginning of the funnel for everyone. So even the people who will eventually be your most ooey gooey, delicious, deep friends, they all started out as friendly acquaintances. And the second implication of that is that, frankly, it can be hard to tell in the beginning who will make it all the way through the funnel to the deepest level of intimacy and commitment. Shasta Nelson calls this a commitment friend, but I think we all sort of intuitively understand that concept. You might say that you had a kind of good feeling about someone who is now your close friend the first time you met them, but the honest truth of it, or at least my observation from my own life, is that there's many more people who I had a good feeling about who never went anywhere at all. They opted out of the funnel or they stalled for reasons that I'll talk about in a second. But the point is, it is next to impossible to predict at the absolute beginning, at the friendly acquaintance stage, and even at many of the earlier stages, who is going to progress all the way through. So the implication of both of these points is that in order to have even a small number of deep friendships, you will mathematically have to start out with a lot of friendly acquaintances and have a real open mind to see who goes deeper over time, because a big chunk of the factors that cause the deepening to happen are beyond your control and have to do with the other person's interest and availability. There's things that you can control, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but quite a bit you can't. And when I first read this concept from Nelson, I felt kind of frustrated, to be honest. Like I said, I'm this person who wants friendships where I can tell all my secrets to the other person and the other person sees me really deeply and knows all my stuff and we can just sit together in sweatpants and watch a movie. And this felt like, oh my gosh, I have to go out and find a bunch of friendly acquaintances. And actually my whole circle of friends is going to be mostly friendly acquaintances for a fairly long time, because that's kind of how moving people through this kind of funnel works. That's the opposite of what I want. But on another level, it was a relief because it helped me understand that if I'm starting from 0 friends, then the first step, the most normal and appropriate step, is that I will have a fairly long time of having mostly friendly acquaintances, because that's how everyone starts. And then as I invest in those relationships, we will see what they become. And just as a side note, I do want to say, when I talk about this funnel, I really hope I don't sound too transactional. Obviously, these are people and not widgets, and relationships with other wonderful humans are so tender and complex and nuanced. But also, I personally have a brain that responds really well to mental models, and this one just made a lot of sense and was helpful to me, so I wanted to share it with you too. So that's number 3. If you want to have close friends, you will have to start with friendly acquaintances. So number 4 is the 2 most important levers for deepening a friendship are intimacy and consistency. The 2 most important levers for deepening a friendship are intimacy and consistency. So this is another model that I got from Shasta Nelson in that same book. And the idea is that as you are deepening a friendship, you are fundamentally increasing 2 characteristics in particular, intimacy and consistency. And you need to be increasing both kind of at a relatively steady rate. You can't just, radically ramp up the consistency without the intimacy, or radically increase the intimacy without the consistency. It won't give you amazing results in terms of deepening the friendship. You need to sort of increase both kind of in a somewhat proportional way. And you must have both. One will not do the trick in order to make a friendship more meaningful. And I think the idea that we do need both, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, on one hand, have you ever met anyone, maybe at a party or at a work conference or something, and you had this incredible connection and you really deeply felt like you were seen by them and they saw you and there was some sort of friendship spark there, but then you just never really hung out that much after that. So the friendship kind of never went anywhere. That would be intimacy without the consistency. And again, when you have one without the other, the friendship doesn't go anywhere. And then there's also people who you probably see a lot, but it never goes that deep. It never gets that intimate. So you are friendly, but there's not a friendship, or at least not a very deep and committed friendship. And that would be consistency without intimacy. And again, the friendship kind of goes nowhere. In your deepest, closest friendships, there's probably a lot of both intimacy and consistency. You're seeing each other consistently, and intimacy is increasing over time. And if you feel a friendship declining, it's probably a lack of at least one of those that's causing it to wither. I really like the simplicity of this model because it was really helpful for me to think about making sure I'm attending to both of those things. So the next couple of points I'm going to speak about are about kind of how do we actually implement increasing intimacy and consistency. In particular, I'm going to talk about consistency because I actually found that to be the harder one. It sounds obvious that you need consistency, but there are some more nuanced points here that I think are worth saying. I will probably talk more about increasing intimacy in general in our relationships in a different podcast. But to summarize, that was number 4. The 2 most important levers for deepening a friendship are intimacy and consistency. Number 5 is you may need to initiate. And look, I will be the very first to say that I love it when the other person goes first, making that first friendship move. And look, on some level, don't we all just want to be safe and not have to face rejection? Because I know I do. And if you are someone who was socialized as a woman, I think the desire for the other person to initiate can be even stronger. I think part of that, is that in many heterosexual relationships, not all, but in many heterosexual relationships, even modern ones with feminist folks in them, the men do often initiate more and can lead the sort of hanging out more, at least in the beginning. And I think in friendships, if you have 2 women trying to be friends, some friendships literally just do not happen because both people are kind of waiting for the other person to take the lead. So my reminder here is you may need to initiate. you may need to ask the other person out, because it kind of is a little bit like dating. Someone needs to ask the other person to hang out, and you may need to ask them to hang out more than once. And obviously, we do want to be sensitive to their cues and not just suggest hanging out over and over and over when they don't give you anything back. But also, and I will raise my own hand here, some of us just don't have as many friendships as we want because we want it to be so precisely 50-50. And if it isn't, we assume they don't like us. And maybe that's not it at all. Maybe the friendship just needed a little more oomph to get off the ground, and maybe you can give it that oomph. So those of you who are really good at this, really good at initiating, and I know people like this, I am friends with some people like this is probably like breathing to you. And for those of us who this is not like breathing, this is my reminder to you. You will have so many more friendship opportunities if you are willing to be the one who initiates. If you are willing to be the one to say, hey, I like you. Do you want to hang out? So that's number 5. You may need to initiate. Number 6 is you may need to initiate recurring hangouts. So there's 2 parts to this one. The first is that I highly recommend recurring hangouts. And the second piece of this is that you may need to initiate that recurring hangout. Hopefully the you may need to initiate part isn't so shocking given what I just said a moment ago. So let's talk about the recurring hangout part. My observation consistently has been that if you are an adult with a job and or a partner and or kids, and you have to reach out, find a convenient day and time and activity that you both would enjoy doing, each time you want to hang out with another person, this whole friendship thing is just not going to happen that much. A more positive way of saying that would be, if you already have a regularly occurring, already scheduled way of seeing another person, you will see each other so much more. And as we just discussed, a requirement to maintaining and then deepening a friendship is that we maintain or increase that consistency. So making it super easy to see them is going to make a huge difference in terms of the quality of your friendship. And in terms of the activity, truly anything goes. Many of my recurring friendship hangs are honestly just walks because I really like walking and talking, and I live in Los Angeles, so that's easy to do all year. I had one client who had a manicure friend who she got manicures with on a regularly occurring basis. My husband has a group of guys called diner dads, and they, you guessed it, are dads who meet at a diner on Thursday nights. I have a group of women who I meet with monthly to share about our work and our lives and support each other however we can. And all of these recurring friendship hangs sound kind of charming, but again, none of them happened automatically. I or my friends initiated the regularly occurring walks. My husband, during a period of our lives that felt really tough when we were really concerned about one of our sons and his health and his development, he literally sought out a group of men and suggested that they meet regularly. I helped initiate this group of women who has now been meeting monthly for 3.5 years. Again, these didn't just happen. And I will also say, pick a cadence that works for you. My husband, as I said, has these diner dads thing, which he does weekly, but I personally can't commit to any kind of friendship hang weekly. Bi-weekly is great, monthly is great, maybe quarterly is great for a given friendship. You get to decide. And I will also say that this particular practice, initiating a recurring friendship hang, is one of those things in my coaching toolbox that tends to just have this shockingly positive impact on things that it shouldn't seem like it would impact. If I can get a client who isn't seeing friends on a super regular basis to implement just one regularly occurring friendship hang, often it can make a big difference to their mood, to their well-being, to their sense of fulfillment, everything. So that's number 6. You may need to initiate recurring friendship hangouts. Number 7 is you will need to connect in multiple contexts. You will need to connect in multiple contexts. This is another one of those Shasta Nelson insights that is kind of obvious once you hear it, but I had never thought about so explicitly. If you see a person in just one context, like just at tango class or just at work or even just on one-on-one walks together, there's genuine limitations for how deep and committed the friendship will be. Eventually, if you want the friendship to be deeper or more committed, you will need to see them in multiple contexts. So for example, let's say you had a friend who you see at church and she's super fun and you love connecting before and after church and it's amazing. That friendship will become so much stronger if at some point you take a walk together or go visit a new art exhibit together, or you invite her over for dinner and she meets your partner, or if she comes over for your kid's birthday party. And it would be the strongest of all if you hang out in all of those contexts. At church and at the art exhibit and at your house with your partner and at the playground at your kid's birthday party. As a result of doing all those things, you will begin to have more mutual acquaintances from different parts of your life and more different types of experiences and memories to connect on. And all of that just fosters more intimacy. Again, I think this is something that has probably just happened totally naturally in most of your closest friendships. You probably just started seeing each other in all of these different contexts without intentionally doing anything. But for me, realizing that I could kind of help the process along by purposely finding opportunities for our friendship to exist in multiple contexts with people who I wanted to be closer to, that was really helpful. I think because both it helped me understand why some friendships didn't feel as close as I wanted them to. A lot of the time, it was because we really only knew each other in one context. And it also gave me something really practical to do, which was to find more contexts in which to get to know them. And obviously here you want to apply your good sense about what the friendship is ready for. You might need to be just church friends for a while before you initiate that walk. And you might need to walk a few times before you invite them over for dinner, but at least knowing that you are eventually going to be cultivating that, I think that's super helpful. So that's number 7. You need to connect in multiple contexts. And number 8, my final point is you will face rejection and you will reject others. I think the reality of rejection is a bit more explicit in the dating world, but it's been really helpful for me to come to accept that it's going to happen in friendship too. And some of that will be that it's just genuinely not the right fit. Maybe the other person doesn't want to increase intimacy and consistency with you, or you don't want to do that with them. And sometimes, other times, it's just not a high enough priority for them, even if they do like you and they do value your friendship. On a personal level, I feel like it can be a bit hard to find friends actually with people who are in the same life stage as me. Like if I meet a cool woman who also has a job and a partner and young kids, even if she does value friendship might be, say, number 6 on her list of life priorities, and she's barely getting to number 1 through 3. So it's just not going to happen. And literally, I will say this happened to me just a couple weeks ago with somebody who I was sort of trying to see if I could cultivate a friendship with. And she just told me, I would really love to. And I'm just too busy right now. And I'll let you know when I'm not. And I was like, yeah, no problem. Totally get it. And I believe her. I think she actually was just too busy. And to be totally fair, I have totally had seasons like that as well. I was actually actively trying to meet a few more close friends right before my son started having seizures 2 years ago. And then I just totally stopped trying at all because dealing with his health and developmental needs just took a huge amount of my time and energy. And I could maintain my existing friendships during that time, but I definitely could not conceive of cultivating new friends until fairly recently. So I just say that to say, I'm not throwing shade on anyone who finds themselves with friendship and cultivating friendship as just a priority that they cannot get to right now. This is more an observation that we may get rejected for that reason. And also the rejection doesn't just happen at the beginning. It can happen at any time in the friendship kind of funnel or life cycle. I had someone a few years ago who I felt I was fairly close with, and I thought we had both sort of made a commitment to kind of deepening our friendship, and she kind of opted out. And it happens. And I have been on the other side too, realizing there were people who I just didn't want to kind of deepen a friendship with at various points in the friendship life cycle, which is all to say, just like searching for love, there is heartbreak in the process of trying to find and deepen friendship. And at least for me, when I acknowledge that explicitly to myself, I find that it works a lot better because then I can feel the fear and move forward rather than being influenced by it, but not realizing that it's influencing me so much. So that is number 8, my final point. You will face rejection and you will reject others. And that is it. So to summarize, number 1, long distance friends are not the same as local friends. 2, finding local friends probably won't just happen. Number 3, if you want to have close friends, you will have to start with friendly acquaintances. 4, the 2 most important levers for deepening a friendship are intimacy and consistency. Number 5, you may need to initiate. Number 6, you may need to initiate recurring hangouts. Number 7, you will need to connect in multiple contexts. And number 8, you will face rejection and you will reject others. I hope these are as practical and as useful to you as they were to me. And above all, if you are feeling a craving for friendship or feeling like you don't have as many friends or as many close friends as you'd like, I hope you will take away from this that there is nothing at all to be embarrassed about and that it means absolutely nothing about your worthiness as a friend. We will all go through many seasons of life where we need more friends. And above all, what a gift your friendship will be to someone who is also looking for a meaningful friendship. Talk to you soon, everyone. I'm rooting for you. If you really want to change in a meaningful, lasting way, that's when you need a life coach. Every client I've worked with has had incredibly personalized reasons why they're in the tired or anxious or stuck or uninspired state they're in. Working with me can help you identify those roadblocks, which are usually blind spots that you genuinely cannot see, and implement a profoundly customized, doable plan for overcoming them. I have a very small, high-end, one-on-one coaching practice. If you'd like to be my next client, reach out at katiesiever.com. I'd love to meet you.